Welcome to the Voice of East Turkestan podcast program produced by Center for East Turkestan National Interest. I am Rukia Turdush. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney made an official visit to Beijing last week. Today we will discuss about his visit and how it will impact Canadian democratic value, democracy and economy and the security, and how it will impact Canada's relations with other allies. We invite Dr. Charles Burton today to today's program. Dr. Charles Burton is former Canadian diplomat in Canadian Embassy in Beijing and the author of the book Beaver and the Dragon, and he's a senior fellow at Synopsys. He's also advisor at Center for East Turkestan National Interest. Hello, Dr. Charles Burton. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation today.
Nice to be with you again.
Press coverages of our Prime Minister's visit to Beijing highlights economic opportunities and say that's rebooting the ties with two countries with little emphasis from the Prime Minister's office on human rights disclosures. And in China's side, public messaging from China frames the visit a turning point for economic and diplomatic relations because it did not mention any human rights. And opposition parties such as Green Party and yourself criticizing our government's approach that sidelining human rights in bilateral dialogues. You recently also published an article in the Press Readers and talk about the plenty risks in this close relationship. But our government may respond differently because our government previously emphasized rule-based approach and working with allies and the multilateral institutions to address human rights issues rather than conducting binary moral judgments in bilateral relationship. Could you tell us why do you think not mentioning human rights in bilateral relationship is not the best approach?
Well, I think in this case, the Prime Minister has agreed to accommodate the Chinese desire for Canada to have a strategic partnership with China. And the Prime Minister said that this strategic partnership would build the basis for a new world order. The way the Chinese are spinning that is that the new world order is essentially Xi Jinping's program of the common destiny of mankind. I think the way it's being described by the Canadians is that we agreed to use strategic partnership, but we don't really mean strategic partnership, but we plan to simply focus on areas in which we can cooperate with China, which would be trade primarily. And there seems to be a suggestion that we could get Chinese investment in Canada in the oil sands sector. But the cost for this is clearly that Canada give tacit consent to China's human rights violations, the Uyghur genocide, China's enabling of third world dictators by providing them with economic development aid and surveillance technologies. So, and the other thing is that when you look at the agreement that Canada has made with regard to China removing the tariffs on Canadian agricultural commodities, particularly canola seeds, that this agreement only lasts for 9 months. It starts in March and then will be reviewed at the end of the year. So that would provide China with further opportunity to further coerce Canada economically to become compliant with China's messaging on human rights violations and gross violations of international law that characterize the nature of China's foreign policy doctrine. And similarly, that Canada would not take effective measures against Chinese influence operations against our policymakers and harassment of persons of Chinese origin or People's Republic of China origin in Canada who want to speak out against China's violations of the universal human rights of their co-religionists and co-ethnicists in the territory of the People's Republic of China, including Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Mongolians, among others. So it is an extraordinary change in Canada's approach, and I think one that's very disturbing in the sense that Canada seems to be prepared to betray our commitments to human rights and the defense of Canadians of certain ethnicities, including the Uyghurs in Canada, in the interests of maximizing the possibility of building Canadian prosperity through trade with China.
Yeah. Do you think current close relationship with China will reduce an automatic alignment of Ottawa with US-led strategy against Beijing?
It's very hard to know how that's going to play out. We know that Mr. Trump will be going to China in April.
Mhm.
Presumably, he wants to strike trade deals which favor the United States and leave the rest of us not favored as much. Whether Mr. Trump has any interest in demanding that China abide by UN covenants with regard to human rights, or in fact, whether he's prepared to defend the self-determination of the people of Taiwan remains to be seen. I am very concerned about how things are playing out with regard to the commitment of like-minded democratic nations to the defense of universal human rights throughout the world. It seems that once we're facing an economic pressure, that the Prime Minister, his party, and to some extent Canadian public opinion support the strategic partnership with a country like China, whose other strategic partners, of course, are Russia and Iran and North Korea and Venezuela, or was Venezuela, Cuba, and so on. So it does seem that we're in a very bad position in terms of defending the aspirations for self-determination of peoples in China who currently are being subject to genocidal and assimilationist policies.
Yeah, when you talk about the Canadian public opinion, I checked yesterday the data published from the nonprofit Angus Reid Institute in partnership with Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. And they found that there's a statistics that February 2023, the Canadian public opinion, 50% people were agreed that we need to focus, that they strongly disagree, not agree, strongly disagree. 50% people strongly disagree that we need to focus more on economic relationship with China. And when it's come to the 2025 and September, and 51% people strongly agreed. 50 was disagreed before. Now is after 2 years, strongly 51 of them is strongly agreed that we need to focus on more our economic relationship with China. Do you think what effect this changes in Canadian public opinion is, do you think, because of the Trump's tariffs?
Yes, I think so. I think you see a similar figure of decline of support for Canada's alliance with the United States, and so as our alienation from the U.S. continues, and Canadians feel less and less supportive of the Western alliance, their support for seeking markets in places like China, and of course our Prime Minister has also been in Qatar, in Doha, another nation that has a very troubling human rights record, trying to encourage investment from Qatar into Canada and more trade. So it does seem that we're prepared to abandon our principles for justice and human rights and humanitarian law if there's some perception that it can preserve employment and enterprises from the assault of the Trump tariff and other policies, such as his desire to reshore automobile production away from southern Ontario into the United States.
Do you think there's a possibility that the United States change its tariff policy after they have seen that Canada tried to become too cozy with China?
I mean, that's an interesting idea that Mr. Carney's agreement with China to bring 49,000 Chinese EVs into Canada could be used as a bargaining chip in the upcoming negotiations over North American free trade. And Mr. Carney would say, well, if you're going to devastate our Ontario auto industry, we might as well bring in the cheap Chinese product because people would like to buy those cars, despite your concerns over national security, because the EVs are like spy machines on wheels, and probably even worse in terms of their overall impact than Huawei 5G that we refuse to bring into our telecommunications system for similar reasons. That the EVs gather information on the drivers and gather information on where they go. Other countries have been limiting the access of EVs to sensitive sites, and I think that unless we're able to come up with some means to prevent them from sending data back to China and to prevent software updates on the EVs from coming from China, which could facilitate the Chinese regime crippling them if we have a kinetic war over South China Sea or Taiwan, that it's very dangerous to have those cars in Canada. And the United States have further indicated that they would not allow the EVs to enter the United States because of the national security concern.
Mhm. Isn't this close relationship or economic alignment with China signal to other allies that hedging between the US and China is possible and potentially create gaps in a unified Western posture on issues like you just say, technology, supply chains, and security?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think the Chinese would like to split up the NATO alliance and further alienate countries from the United States. I think, though, objectively speaking, our total external commodity trade to China is between 4 and 5%, compared to over 70 with the United States.
Mhm.
And the Chinese economy is currently in crisis due to failure of the real estate sector and very low confidence among consumers, resulting in deflation, high unemployment among young people, particularly university graduates, demographic crisis because people don't have the confidence to have large families, and so there's an aging population. So the idea that we could massively increase our exports to China strikes me as very unlikely. If China is already having economic difficulties, would they really want to replace their own production with Canadian production? It seems not very likely to happen. And in terms of massive increases in import of Canadian agricultural commodities, I mean, if China buys more from Canada, then they have to buy less from somewhere else. Probably not a strategy that would sustain in the long term. So I do think that a lot of this is a kind of myth making. It's not actually substantive, and this will become apparent quite soon as we don't see those kinds of great benefits that we're anticipating to try and mitigate against the U.S. assault on the Canadian economy. But different European countries have different views on this, and
Mhm.
Europe itself is less and less united, and some countries in Europe are suffering from considerable economic dislocation, which is drawing them into the hands of China. We and that they're making decisions which seem to be very much in contradiction to what their security and intelligence services are saying with regard to China. In the recent announcement that the UK has agreed to this massive embassy, which has enormous intelligence gathering capability due to its proximity to certain key communications cables, um, because that's conditional for the British Prime Minister to go to China, apparently, really indicates how desperate countries are to be seen by their population as engaging in promotion of prosperity to prevent massive unemployment and bankruptcy of key industries in the wake of the U.S. action.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because those kind of close, cozy-off relationship may interpret by China as a weakness in Western diplomatic resolve, and
Yeah.
China will try to manipulate this for sure. And I think I would like to ask one more question: how Canada's Arctic policy fits into U.S.-Canada-China dynamics and
Well,
security-wise?
this is very troubling. I mean, Canada has neglected our northern defense, and we're really incapable of defending our borders. And most recently, Mr. Trump's group have been expressing concern about the the lack of security in the Arctic, which strengthens their arguments for assuming control over Canada as the 51st state. I mean, if somehow or other Mr. Trump was able to acquire Greenland, Canada is the neighbor of Greenland, and it would make sense that from the U.S. perspective, that Canada should similarly be part of the U.S. landmass. So it's very hard for us in a short period of time to develop the facilities that would allow us to defend our Arctic against the Russian and Chinese challenge to our sovereignty, including disputes over what territorial waters are Canadian and what are international waters and so on. And, China is investing a lot of money in the Arctic in icebreakers and mapping the sea floor. And I think the U.S. is rightly concerned, but it's been a failure of Canadian policy to believe that we can leave the defense of our own nation to the United States, which is in effect what we did by underfunding our military over decades. And now that the United States is withdrawing from that role, we're really left very seriously exposed. And China and Russia, I think, see some opportunity there that would threaten our security and sovereignty.
What about the NATO? What is this China-Canada cozy relationship means for NATO's collective stance towards China?
Well, I think that we have been participating in some NATO activities in the Indo-Pacific. There's a lot of debate about whether NATO ought to emphasize the defense of Europe, including Ukraine, or if NATO would be stretched too thin to pose an effective military force in Indo-Pacific waters. I mean, we do freedom of navigation exercise in the Taiwan Strait, and we have been involved in some interdiction of North Korean busting of the UN sanctions by monitoring by airplanes those waters and the ships that transfer oil and such like, facilitated by China, of course, into that. But our contribution has been relatively small, and we don't have a lot of resources. So I am wondering about that. And then there's the question, really, if the United States did decide to become aggressive in seeking to annex Canada, to what extent would NATO support us under Article 5 if they have enough worries about their own area, their closer area. So, I mean, these are questions that in the past have been unthinkable, but now we have to think about them. And the world is changing so quickly that we don't know what the result will be. I think a lot of people, including myself, are looking at the U.S. midterm elections to see if there will be some constraints placed on Mr. Trump's arbitrary authority. I mean, some of his statements, such as his resentment over not being awarded the Nobel Prize, informing his desire to assume control of Greenland, just seem to be completely beyond any kind of normal international doctrine. Just seems to be about Mr. Trump personally, as opposed to the larger interest of the United States that he is supposed to be representing.
Yep. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Charles Burton, for your very insightful opinions. And I totally agree with you that Canada's close relationship with China is not without risking its security, sovereignty, and the democratic value and human rights values. It is very unrealistic to think China will not use economic ties for political influence in Canada also. Hope more and the more Canadians understand that security and the sovereignty is important than economic benefit. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hope we can speak again soon.
Thank you.